Monopoly, presented by Wendy Hall. What is a monopoly? A monopoly is a market structure where a single seller or producer assumes a dominant position in an industry or a sector. Monopolies are discouraged in free market economies as they stifle competition and limit substitutes for consumers. So basically, it's one firm selling a unique product. The firm is a price maker, not a price taker. Understanding a monopoly. Monopolies can dictate price changes and create barriers for competitors to enter the marketplace. Companies become monopolies by controlling the entire supply chain from production to sales through vertical integration or buying competing companies in the market through horizontal integration, becoming the sole producers. Monopolies typically reap the benefit of economies of scale, the ability to produce mass quantities at a lower cost per unit. The pros and cons of a monopoly. Without competition, monopolies can set prices and keep pricing consistent and reliable for consumers. Standing alone as a monopoly allows a company to securely invest in innovations without fear of competition. Conversely, a company that dominates a sector or industry can use its advantage to create artificial scarcities, fix prices, and provide low quality products. So a price fixing is basically an agreement, written verbal from conduct among competitors to raise, lower, maintain, or stabilize prices or price levels. Generally, the antitrust laws require that each company establish prices and other competitive terms on its own without agreeing with a competitor. When purchasers make choices about what products and services to buy, they expect that the price has been determined on the basis of supply and demand, not by an agreement among competitors. So when competitors agree to restrict competition, the result is often, it basically results in higher prices. So the regulation of a monopoly. The antitrust laws and regulations are in place to discourage monopolistic operations, to protect consumers, and ensure an open market. So Microsoft is an example. So in 1994, Microsoft was accused of using its significant market share. So they basically was brought in front of the federal district court because Microsoft of the market share that they had in their personal computer operation system basically prevented competition, and they were maintaining a monopoly. So with the antitrust legislations, Microsoft was accused of using exclusionary and anti-competitive contracts to market its personal computer operation system software. By these contracts, Microsoft had unlawfully maintained its monopoly of personal computer operational systems. So they were doing something very illegal, and they were brought in front of the court because they had an unreasonably restrained trade. So in 1998, the federal court basically ruled that Microsoft should be broken up into two technological companies, but then the decision was later reversed on appeal by a higher court. And Microsoft was free to maintain its operation systems, application development, and marketing methods. So Microsoft basically got off with that. So the antitrust cases can be prosecuted by state or federal governments. Consumers who suspect a company is violating antitrust laws can contact the Antitrust Division or Federal Trade Commission at the federal level. So one of the barriers, basically, they're obstacles that can stand in the way for competitors to get a piece of the pie. So one of the barriers, obstacles such as patents that make it difficult or impossible for would-be producers to enter a particular market. So here we have a sable skin fur scarf. So these are usually worn in Russia, in Siberia, one of the coldest places in the world. So it's a little animal fur that they use. So here's a little world view. Basically, it's telling you how Russia monopolized the sable skin and didn't let anyone into the competition. So Russia's sable monopoly persists. Ancient Greeks and Romans called the fur of the sable the golden fleece. Unlike any other fur, sable is smooth in all directions, even after stroke. Living in the wilds of Siberia, the sable has always been one of Russia's most valuable exports. So in 1697, Peter the Great decreed a monopoly on sable, forbidding the export of the live sable or the technology of breeding them. So Peter basically did not want anyone else to be producing these furs. So in the 1980s, Russia was selling more than 15 million sable pelts a year and reaping monopoly-type profits. Exporting live sables or the breeding technology was a crime punishable by death. So there was a movie that was made in 1983, basically depicted the murder of 3 men who attempted to export live sables. So here we have it. The Russians understood the strategy. They made sure no one, whether black market, secretly, no one was able to produce sable furs that could compete with their monopoly. So we have some examples of monopolies. We have the pure monopoly. A pure monopoly is a single seller in a market or sector with high barriers to entry, such as significant startup costs, whose products has no substitute. We have the monopolistic competition. That's the multiple sellers in an industry sector with similar substitutes. Barriers to entry are low, and the competing companies differentiate themselves through pricing and marketing efforts. So their offerings are not perfect substitutes, such as a Visa or a MasterCard. Other examples of monopolistic competition includes retail stores, restaurants, and hair salons. Then we have the natural monopoly, which basically develops in reliance on unique and raw materials, technology, or specialization. Companies that have patents or extensive research and development costs, such as pharmaceutical companies, are considered natural monopolies. And then we also have the public monopoly. So public monopoly provides essential services and goods, such as the utility industry, as only one company commonly supplies energy or water to a region. The monopoly is allowed and heavily regulated by the government, municipalities, and rate increases are controlled. So it's basically like some parts of Massachusetts we have Eversource, and then other parts we have National Grid. So that's basically what that explains. And I also wanted to mention as well that as of even 2022, Microsoft was one of the first companies actually to hold a pure monopoly position on personal computer operating systems. And as of 2022, its desktop Windows software still held a market share of 75.1%. So they still have a stronghold in the market. Here we have demand for monopolies graph. We have the price, so we have the demand, and we have the quantity. So basically, a monopoly determines not only the quantity to produce, but also the price it will charge. So the demand curve firm faces is the market demand curve. Thus, if it wants to sell more, it must lower the price. Does a monopoly have an incentive to advertise? Since the firm is also the market demand curve, it has 100% of the market share. However, monopolies may advertise to increase overall markets. Overall markets demand, or to improve goodwill or public relations. Here we have a picture of what we spoke about in the regarding a natural monopoly, a construction site, or not really a utility site, whether it could be National Grid, Con Edison, or Eversource, a power site. In certain industries, natural monopolies exist where the long-run average cost curve continues to decline. Here we have it, LRAC. We have the demand, and we have the Q for quantity, and the price. Okay, so in certain industries, natural monopolies exist where the long-run average cost continues to decline in the relative region of demand. Consequently, one firm is able to produce enough for the market at a lower per unit cost price that would be the case if two firms shared the market. In this case, positive profits can exist, but entrants cannot enter to capture some of these profits because sharing the market means that they have to enter at a smaller scale of operation and thus face higher average costs. The transmission of electricity, again as we picture here, is one of the examples. So determining the price quantity, profit maximization for a monopoly charging a single price will occur where marginal revenue is equal to marginal costs. It is important to note that this gives the profit maximizing quantity, but the price is determined by going up the demand curve. That is, the price is obtained based upon the consumers are willing to, based on what the consumers are willing to pay for that quantity level, which is determined by the demand curve. Profits for the monopolists are obtained by calculating the total revenue, which we have here as a TR, minus the total cost, TC. Total revenue equals optimal price. Optimal quantity, the combined area of the blue and gray boxes in this figure here. Taking the average total cost times the profit maximizing the quantity gives the total cost. In the short run, a monopoly may earn short-run profits or losses, but unlike firms in pure competition that have zero economic profits in the long run, monopolies can maintain long-run profits. If long-run profits are negative, the firm would leave the industry and the good will no longer be produced, since the monopoly has the only firm in the industry. Elasticities. Elasticities that along a linear demand curve, there is an elastic and inelastic portion. In the elastic portion, lower prices increase the total revenue, and the inelasticity portion, total revenue falls as the price decreases. Total revenue is maximized at unit elasticity, which occurs where the marginal revenue is 0. This provides for an important observation because we would expect marginal cost to be positive, and monopolistic chooses to produce where the marginal revenue equals the marginal cost. We can conclude that a monopolist would only produce in the elastic region of the demand curve. Price discrimination. Price discrimination is when a firm sells the same good to different consumers at different prices. An example is students or senior discount dumping in foreign countries. For a monopolist to price discriminate, buyers must be separated according to their willingness to pay, and low price buyers must be prevented from selling to high price buyers. Profit maximization for a monopoly. The key difference between a perfectly competitive firm and a monopoly is that the competitive firm faces a flat demand curve because it can sell as much as it wants to the market price. In a market with thousands of small firms, one firm's residual demand curve is very flat, even if the market demand curve is not. On the other hand, a monopolist must accept a lower price if it wants to sell significantly more output. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my PowerPoint presentation. I just wanted to give a voiceover, and I hope this was enjoyable for you. Thank you.